may not need this podcast, but I promise you're in the right place. I'm your host, Ben McDougal, with my AI companion and co-host, BenBot. Each week, we're live in the Pour Over Publishing studio to chat with remarkable students, entrepreneurs, intrapreneurs, and community builders. Together, we have fun exploring the frontiers of entrepreneurship and technology in Iowa and beyond. If you're a curious leader thirsty enough to make a ruckus, welcome to a friendly jolt brewed to keep you building. Enjoy! I am putting on my driving gloves. This is going to be a fast-paced episode. Clayton Mooney's in the house. What's up, my friend?
Thank you for having me, Ben.
Dude, we were fighting to get you in studio for season 1 of You Don't Need This podcast, but thankfully you're going to get us off to a great start here in season 2. Thanks for making the trip. Dude, I saw you roll up in a Cybertruck, and so I thought this would be hilarious to wear my driving gloves during this. And don't forget, I've got driving aviators to wear as well. I hope this doesn't throw you off too much.
You're ready to rock and roll.
We're having fun, my friends. Welcome to a podcast brewed for students, entrepreneurs, intrapreneurs, and community builders. Boy, today we're going to talk about all sorts of interesting activities. Clayton is involved with ultra running, poker, painting, boxing, book writing, and climbing. Like, there's so many activities outside of work that lead to life and happiness. And so let's start in that direction. But Clayton Farms is a remarkable story. Went through Y Combinator in 2019, built a tech startup using like hydroponic technology, and is now opening windows, farm to window type activity. Clayton, why don't you share a short introduction and then we'll jam?
Yeah, for those who don't know me, I'm Clayton Mooney. I'm co-founder and chief farmer of Clayton Farms. And I like to introduce myself to other groups as someone who I'm a farmer that grows without soil, and I grow year-round from central Iowa.
I love it. What's your favorite thing to grow?
Ooh, right now it's our peppery arugula.
So the way you answered it makes me think it's different all the time.
It can change. So our entire menu and how we grow and what we grow comes from feedback from our customers. And about 2 years ago, customers requested a really peppery arugula. We had never grown it before. Flash forward, grown it, love it.
Interesting. One of my favorite salads includes like a blackened shrimp, because that hint of spice is nice addition on all the crisp, fresh, like lightness of a salad.
Oh, yes. Yeah, our most popular right now it's a harvest salad with butter lettuce and our arugula. So you get that little peppery kick, and a lot of people's adding seared salmon to it.
Dude, you're just playing in the chemistry lab, bringing things to life that you get to taste, and probably your chief taste tester as well along the way, right?
Absolutely.
So, I mean, before we get all the way down the path of like the future of food in space, let's work our way that direction, though. What's a thought when you're climbing a mountain that comes to mind? I know we're just going to dive right in, but why not?
Yeah, so I lived in Denver for a while, was very intrigued by all the 14ers around there. And when I jumped into summiting the 14ers, what I realized was you get to the top of one, you look around, there's a lot more mountains. And I think it's a good reminder to be stoic, because the age-old quote of behind mountains are more mountains rings very true in those moments.
Interesting. Now, that's the thought of as you summit. What's a thought maybe on your way there, and in contrast, on your way down?
Ooh, on the way down is usually really hungry. I've got to get more food. But
a lot of injuries happen on the way down. You're almost like you've lost focus because you've achieved something.
That's right. Yeah, you're not on your A game. You think, okay, I made it to the top. Now it's just smooth sailing. But most injuries do happen on the way down. I would say, though, on the way up, it's a good reminder of just how small we are. And as you look around, and hopefully, you're unplugged from anything technology in those moments, and you look around, you constantly are reminded by how small you are. And when you get towards the top, there's kind of I think you mentioned this in the episode with Jeff Reed.
Yeah.
Like the false summits. Very, very true.
Oh.
Especially if you're running lower on energy and you're like, okay,
I'm
here
there,
we go.
I'm there. Nope.
2 more hours to go. That's right.
Oh man. Well, thank you. That's interesting. And in comparison, I have those senses of small when I look through telescopes. My interest in astronomy. That joke is for Sinclair. But also like just the cosmos itself. It almost makes me like, oh, what we're doing is just so cute.
That's what my running coach says. At the end of the day, he says something along the lines of, we are all stardust just floating in the wind, so not much matters anyway.
That sounds like an EDM track to me.
That's right.
Clayton, we've known each other for so long. It's been fun to see your personality evolve as you've gotten involved. And it feels as though you have a hard time just dabbling.
Yes.
Like, I'm not going to go for a run. I'm going to run through all of the elements over 30 miles. Like, I'm going to run all night. What is ultra running and why do you do it?
I would say, 10 years ago when I moved back to Iowa from living in Ireland, I jumped headfirst into startups and startup communities. At the time when starting to build a company, the stress starts to pile up and you're looking for moments to de-stress. I think there's a lot of vices that are not healthy. So when I turned 30, we had just started Clayton Farms, and I told myself I was going to do something drastic with my diet. So I cut out added sugar and alcohol entirely. So that's 7 years ago now. And with doing so, I started looking into more fitness routines beyond just boxing, something that maybe didn't beat me up as much and that I could enjoy kind of in those moments. And I came across a book called The Happy Runner. It completely changed my entire outlook on running. And once I started with 5Ks, moved up to 10Ks, then a half marathon, then a marathon, I got to the finish line of the marathon and I said I enjoyed the distance, but I didn't enjoy running on the pavement. And so I started looking for other types of races, came across trail running, and then all of a sudden I noticed there's something more than a marathon. And I became addicted to them. So here we are about 5 years into running ultras. I've done 20 and I have a couple more coming up.
Wow. How do you push through those moments where you want to walk?
Sometimes you end up walking and
Yeah.
you're beating yourself up after the race, wanting to have looked back and saw a better time. But I think a lot of my training is me processing problems, whether it's business related or not. And that helps with a discipline and it actually helps with patience. So I see races a lot of the times being a celebration of the training.
You've always been a very mindful, disciplined individual. And it's one of the things that I think has led to your entrepreneurial fever. Your success is willing to, not only pursue something with everything, but also pivot and, figure out that sometimes idea A is not the path to take. Being so diligent, it feels important to also be agile and open-minded. How does that connect to your interest with painting? You get to have a fresh canvas and you might think you're going in one direction, or writing these poetry books or children's books. Like, you have so many creative outlets along with the physical fitness factors of running a kabillion miles. Yeah. What are some of the things that you feel nourished by when it might not be as much physical exercise, but you're nourishing yourself in different ways?
Yeah, so I think writing is very therapeutic. And so if I've already done all of my miles for the week, writing, whether it's a blog post or writing a book or a children's book, I think that is very freeing to me. And I a lot of times work through those problems. But specifically with painting, it really comes back to how I was raised. And so I would consider myself very, very blessed and fortunate. So my dad taught me everything about hard work and being a stoic. He worked for John Deere for 44 years as a machinist, whereas my mom was a professional painter. And so a lot of times in her setup in her studio, when I would walk in, she would be painting something or just starting on a painting. And I would look at it and it was just a blank canvas, right? And my mom would ask me, "Do you see it?" And I would respond with, "Well, what?" And she taught me to be more process oriented instead of results oriented, which weirdly does translate to startups because of the fact that if you're building, a minimal viable product and you're thinking about those prototypes, those first versions need to be moving towards solving a problem. They might be ugly, or you may not see the final big, awesome commercial product yet, but you have to remain process oriented with it.
Well, it can be frustrating if your only focus is the result, knowing that it's not just going to happen in that way. Interesting connection. Now, knowing that you also were a professional poker player, I mean, I had to ask Ben Bott, which is our friendly co-host in the studio, if you could perhaps compare boxing to painting. And so I don't know. Ben Bott, do you have any thoughts here?
Boxing and painting may seem like vastly different activities, but both require a high level of skill, precision, and creativity. Just as a painter must carefully plan and execute each brushstroke, a boxer must strategically plan and execute each punch to outmaneuver their opponent.
All right. Not bad, Ben Bott. I mean, it's always fun to hear what that perspective adds into the mix. What comes to mind when you hear what Ben Bott shares?
I think both absolutely take a lot of just dedication and that focus and bringing creativity. And we can see, boxers of all different types who are successful. We can see painters of all different types who are successful. Where my mind goes is on painting being that process oriented and looking back. And I love the idea of working on a painting and taking a photo every hour and watching that evolution. Whereas in boxing, where my mind goes is if you are in the ring, whether you're sparring or competing, and you take your mind out of the moment, the result is physical pain. And so it forces immediate. And so it forces you have to live in the moment, which I think we could all use a little bit more of.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. When I think about poker, you and Brad Dwyer, Mr. Machine learning and computer vision guy. I know he's got something in his pocket that's telling him what to do on every hand. But you two are the only folks that are in my close friend network that I'm afraid of playing poker against. I'm curious, when you think about the game, any tips for our listeners?
Well, first, let me know if you have any home games going on.
Exactly.
But for me, 90% of my poker playing career was actually online poker, and it was a video game to me. And so I treated it as a business from day one with multiple revenue streams. And I think it was really important to have, a bankroll that you focus on growing so you can move up in stakes, but also coaching and charging an hourly so I could, pay rent, get groceries every month. That was really important to be disciplined when starting out and treating it as a business. Flash forward to some tips and tricks for anyone. Just understand sample size is everything. And so the best players in the world could play, 100 tournaments and not cash in any of them. So you need to think really long-term with it. So back to kind of that process-oriented kind of going in. And then it is mathematically solved as a game. So it comes down to deductive reasoning. So the more you can study the hands, especially the hands where you felt like something was off, the better you're going to be at playing at the actual tables.
My friends, I hope you have your driving gloves on. I told you this was going to be a fast episode. We've talked about ultra running, climbing, summiting, descending, some of these mountain climbing environments, poker, painting, boxing, Cybertruck. Maybe we skip that for now. It's just been a little bit more of a, what were you saying? There's just been a lot more attention than you thought it might generate.
The only thing that I'll say is, one, it's a computer on wheels. Two, it's much more controversial than I could have ever imagined.
Controversial, that was the word I was looking for. And with the book writing thing, you talked about the therapeutic nature of writing, and I would agree. Writing helps us understand ourselves. Reading helps us understand the world. And a lot of us, like you'll be in a networking or a community environment, and we all know those folks who just go at the conversation. You can't get a word in, they're just over, doing it. They just need to write.
That's right.
It's another output that they can feel that sensation and maybe say more with less.
Yeah, I think when it comes to writing, the therapeutic side is it helps bring you clarity. And at the end of the day, I think if we could all have more clarity, life would be a lot more beautiful.
I felt that too. It helps you speak more thoughtfully, and along with being able to articulate your thoughts, perhaps because you've written them, you've talked to different people, the perspectives have changed. It gives you a thickness to conversations. When you and I talk about, food in space, and I've thought about it, I've written in that direction, or you've got a blog, or you've got an article, you can share that beyond the moment and add additional thoughts that were, thoughtfully crafted. I like being able to index thoughts in that way.
And I think it's really important. I think you've mentioned it on past episodes, but once you publish that content and it's out there, it will live well beyond you. And I think that's pretty powerful. Whether it's a book or a blog or, you enjoy photography, it all lives beyond you.
Yeah. Okay, so we've had a variety of different topics already discussed. We've got that commercial without a commercial on its way. But before we get to that point, here's the cliffhanger. What's a reality nobody wants to admit? Are you looking for that next keynote speaker? Maybe it's a workshop or something to add energy into your conference. Perhaps you're an educator looking to engage and activate students. Hey, my name is Ben McDougal, and if you jump over to benmcdougal.com and hit the speaker page, you'll find a variety of different talks that were brewed to resonate with students, entrepreneurs, and intrapreneurs so that together we can continue building what's next. All right, back to the show.
Welcome back to the mix.
We are here with Clayton Mooney, and we asked I don't know if this is too deep, too hard, too raw, too challenging, but what is a reality nobody wants to admit?
Okay, here we go. Life is so short, it should actually be easier for us to think in decades. So, hard decisions equal easy life, easy decisions equal hard life.
Love it. This has been a quick fire from the start. I'm still wearing my driving gloves. Sounds like we're going on a stroll in the Cybertruck after this. We should just done the podcast on the road. We have an In the Wild category. This could have been it.
Right. The driving in cars, getting coffee with the comedians, that's
a good one, actually. Jerry Seinfeld, I think, rolls on that. That's a fun one. And we could be growing some hydroponic plants and eating salad. Like, we'd never need to stop. We'd just be a content creation machine on the road with Clayton Mooney, my friends. This is a compelling conversation. I hope you're enjoying the nerdery, but also like the deep truths of the realities that the entrepreneurial lifestyle entails. Let's rewind real quick. Give us like a rewind on your entrepreneurial journey with what was Nebulum and now is Clayton Farms.
Yeah, so my journey into startups, it really kicked off when I was asked very nicely to leave Ireland back in 2014. I met a lot of poker players turned angel investors in tech companies, and they told me building a technology company was more fast-paced than playing 40 tables of online poker at once. And it was more rewarding because at the end of the day, you're hopefully building a technology that makes the world a better place. So flash forward to getting back to specifically Ames. I started my first company, a company called Kinosol, where we built solar food dehydrators for farmers in developing regions. I was co-founder and chief product officer there. And a lot of our work was abroad. So I would spend a lot of my time in Rwanda, Uganda, Tanzania, Brazil, working with partners. And I kept coming back to, what does food security mean in our own backyard? So flash forward years later, and I posed that on my blog at the time to maybe like 24 readers. And thankfully, I had a friend from community college, Dane and Poole, reach out to me. And my question was around, how do we provide people with the food they deserve, meaning food security starting in Iowa? And he said, I've got the answer to your question, and it's indoor farming. I said, indoor farming, why? Well, Danon's background is unique because it's plant biology and mechanical engineering. And Danon started pointing out all of the inconsistencies within the indoor farming space, such as most indoor farms are really big. They're centralized, so they're built further away from consumers. a lot of the indoor farms that have raised a lot of venture capital on the coasts want the farms run by robots, and we're just not there yet. So at the end of the day, vertical farming and indoor farming has a lot of maturing to do. And Danon felt like we could work on a technology that allowed us to grow food in a smaller footprint. So instead of 50,000 square feet, a room like we're in here today, or 1,000 square feet, if you could grow food closer to people, that meant you had full flavor, full nutrition year round. And it really aligned with my thesis of providing people with the food they deserve. And so that's how we started the company. Flash forward to 7 years in, I like to point out that our mission is still the same, but our business model has definitely taken some twists and turns.
Well, I mean, and one huge example is going to YC, Y Combinator, one of the more well-known accelerators in the world, and working through that experience was highly valuable. I mean, you learned how to tell your story, you connected into the network for potential investors, and understood kind of the way to build that startup in the way that you wanted. But last year you had a drive-through, and so it's just not your average path from technology startup to what some might look at as a small business. What did it require you to set ego aside in order to not be seen as this, picturesque tech CEO and have a small business drive-through type I'm not discounting either direction. I'm just curious, that process had to have been emotional.
Very emotional. How we approached it was, if you go to first principles thinking of the raw definition of a startup, in this case, a technology startup. So you have a technology, you're searching for a repeatable, scalable business model. And so our technology piece was sound, and that's the hydroponic growing equipment.
It didn't really change away from being a technology company.
No.
Yeah.
And so the technology, it's the same as it was with previous business models. And throughout the years testing, one thing Y Combinator really helped us to focus on, like you mentioned, was the storytelling aspect of it, and just simplify what we do. If you would have asked me when we first started the company what our one-liner was, it would have been
10 lines.
Yeah, exactly. High pressure aeroponics, something AI, something.
Believe me, it's impressive.
Yeah, that's right. But flash forward to demo day, it was 2 days before Y Combinator demo day, and Michael Seibel steps in. Our main partner, Eric Mijakowski, we were brainstorming, trying to come up with our one-liner, something that would just be front and center in a room full of 1,400 investors. And Michael Seibel comes in, he's like, okay, remind me, what are you working on? I start talking. He asked me a couple clarifying questions, and he looks at us, he's like, easy. It's the John Deere for indoor farming. Are we done here? And so that was it. And all of a sudden, John Deere for indoor farming. And there's multiple paths you can take with that. And so after Y Combinator, when we relocated back to Iowa and started building in the Iowa State University Research Park, we tested a business model where we'd rent out our technology. And then we moved into, when the pandemic hit, we became the farm ourselves and said, let's offer this subscription service. And we scaled that to multiple locations to really prove out the technology could be run remotely.
You were delivering a lot of salads all around the Midwest.
Yeah, so we had our farm in Ames that delivered as far as Des Moines, like Waukee area here. Then we had our farm in Minneapolis that delivered throughout Minneapolis and St. Paul. Over a few years, we completed about 30,000 deliveries, and customers were able to enjoy about 250,000 homemade meals from ultra local greens year round. But flash forward to the beginning of 2023, we were looking at business models that could be more sustainable. And we came across a statistic that showed there'd be 100,000 restaurants shutting down in the U.S. in just 1 year.
Real estate availability.
Yeah, so we loved the idea of taking over vacant space. And a lot of the restaurants were shutting down because they had dine-in space no one wanted to go to anymore. So as an example, Burger King play places, no one wants to take their kids there anymore. And so we asked ourselves, what if we could take over a vacant restaurant, convert the dine-in space to the farm, and then serve the world's freshest salads, wraps, and smoothies through the drive-thru plus online ordering?
And
we are 15 months in, about to celebrate 70,000 salads, wraps, and smoothies served since open. much more sustainable business model. And now I want there to be 9,999 more locations.
Wow, 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 wow. So what a full circle of taking a quote tech startup to maybe feeling or looking from the outside as a small business, but then turning the knob one more time to franchise such a thing, which is the conversion of a small business to a scalable startup.
That's right. And it even comes back to kind of our one-liner, the John Deere for indoor farming. If we can equip individuals who want to be the chief farmer for their local restaurant and plus farm, I think that's really, really important, and we will be their technology partner through and through.
Do you hope to still add that diversification of including the salads at your doorstep, or is it come to us, we're now at the drive-through window?
We like to now have everyone coming to us.
Sure.
And we do sell some of the raw greens through the window, and some past subscribers still come through to pick up the raw greens. But we are heavily focused on the actual menu items, which is driven by our customers voting on which salads, wraps, and smoothies we should offer.
What an interesting way to create customer interactions, loyalty, remarkability when they're adding their feedback and you're able to spin that up. I mean, how quick can you craft a salad that is my idea?
About 10 days. And then it's a secret menu item.
Oh,
So secret
boy.
menu items.
Then it comes with an NFT, right?
There we go. One of these days. One of these days.
Dude, that is amazing. And you can rely on all the delivery services to, if someone wanted a salad at home, to execute perhaps someone else going through the drive-through, picking it up and delivering it without being the source and provider and delivery. So that's interesting, not to dilute yourself to mediocrity by keeping things evolving and focused.
Yes, we're pretty excited by the fulfillment side from fellow Y Combinator company DoorDash. It's like 80+% of our online orders that go
Right,
out.
that's what I was thinking. Now, when you start to wonder about, like, I have a shirt from you, like, I forget, like salad on Mars.
Oh, from Iowa to Mars.
From Iowa to Mars, right? And so when we think about space, the future of transportation, we're going to need nourished in one way or another. Let's have some fun futurist flavored conversation, Clayton. What comes to mind when I say food in space?
To me, so one, I'm colorblind, but to me, I think it's really important to, when you are on an exploration, to see things that remind you of home. And so if you can actually see green things, lettuce growing, psychologically speaking, that has to have a lot of impact as you turn around and look out the window.
That's interesting. I appreciate you going that direction right out of the bat versus we need to stay nourished with nutrients to feed the human body. It's an emotional thing.
It is. And from the get-go. But I will have to say, I've changed my stance on food and space over the years. And what I mean by that is when we first started, as full-blown everything technology, we took a lot of the research that NASA had done for growing food in zero gravity conditions, and that inspired us to design and build what we use for our technology today. But over the years, something that kept bringing me back, especially just starting in Iowa and then wanting to go everywhere here on this planet, is as a little kid, I grew up in a food desert. Just outside of a small town in southeast Iowa. My family farm is still there today. And I thought when I left the family farm, there would be someone out there or organizations out there who would make a big dent in the amount of food deserts. And today there's more food deserts than ever before. So before starting to solve problems in outer space, I think there's millions and millions of problems to solve here for both nutrition and just accessibility.
Well, and your approach to being more localized, being quality instead of quantity, and being able to scale that model, my guess is it's challenging to fire up a new location if you haven't done it many times in different ways before. So are you able to fire up a new drive-through anywhere in the country right now?
Yeah, so in Iowa, we want to have a couple of more company-owned locations. Outside of Iowa, all partner locations.
Gotcha.
So we want to bring them a full turnkey. It's a Farm Plus restaurant with everything with our brand and the back-end support. And I think that's really important to us to find other individuals who care as much as I do about Central Iowa and the food here, so they can be the chief farmer as the owner and operator in their location with their community. But what's awesome about, all of these years compounding towards what works and what doesn't work, this first location we actually launched in 6 weeks. We got the keys. 6 weeks later, we had demoed, we had installed the farm, we had started growing food, and then we served the first salads through the drive-through. So turnaround time, very, very quick.
Well, there's value in all the experimentation and execution you had done for years before. This was a new canvas, but you had already painted something similar.
That's right. Yeah, and had to light some venture capital on fire along the way to learn what not to do.
Well, I asked BenBot. I don't want to dwell on this food in space thing, but reading an interesting book about the future, and I just enjoy thinking about what's possible. And so whether that's, genetic computing we were talking about before we went on air, or these smart materials that can be activated in almost passive ways as we interact with them. I had to just prompt BenBot one time for our episode, and I asked it, what comes to mind when I say food in space?
Hydroponic farming, 3D printed food, food recycling, space-grown mushrooms, and edible packaging.
I mean, Clayton, you mentioned the nature of your technology is hydroponic farming. I'm curious what comes to mind when you think about some of the other things BenBot mentioned.
I love the edible packaging. That's something that is pretty close to what we do and our customer base because of the fact that we don't want any waste. So as customers drive through, all of our salad bowls are compostable packaging. As much recycled material as possible, just so there is less waste. Edible packaging would be awesome. Another thing that comes to mind is on the 3D printed food, I take that as, what can be lab grown, but you'll have to figure out the marketing around that because lab grown, said to anybody, does not sound appetizing. But maybe if you're an astronaut and that's the only option, great. But if you can start with, less space and grow more food out of it, then sign me up for those experiments.
Interesting. It would connect almost to that emotional experience of seeing something grow. 3D printing is kind of growing, and
Yeah.
maybe it's made of different materials versus plastic. That was an interesting direction that a couple of our episodes from season 1 journeyed down was 3D printed fashion. And so when you think about the sustainability factor, that's a key phrase in fashion. It's what if I show up to where I'm headed and instead of lugging around all my luggage, yes, you could 3D print your outfit. I almost want to just jump in the shower and let it rain on me on what it needs to look like that day. These are the fun ways to think about how sustainability technology might add ease while, getting a little weird along the way.
I love that idea, and especially because as we move towards, I think over the next 10 to 15 years, a society where universal basic income is probably tested at a larger scale through, let's say, the humanoid robots, like maybe Optimus through Tesla, whereas then all of a sudden it starts doing your laundry, your grocery shopping, etc. And I feel like as we move that direction, people will just have ease of access, and 3D printing, if it speeds up, maybe you do get your full closet every morning just printed.
Yeah, I can't wait for 3 days for that thing to print out.
That's right. Got to be on the go, and can't miss any parts of the clothing either.
Well, we have talked about such a nice variety of things today, Clayton. I've been looking forward to our conversation for a while. One of the things we didn't jam in too much depth with was about the entrepreneurial lifestyle. I mean, we've talked about tactics and mindsets and different things that nourish that lifestyle. But I want to create some space for you to jam on maybe something that has been on your heart lately or something you'd like to share with listeners before we close down.
Yeah, so I'm very passionate about the Iowa startup community. And as I've become, a community member of other communities and kind of different other facets, something that I'd encourage everyone to do, especially in our community, is to think bigger and try to be more direct in whether you're asking for help or telling people what you want to accomplish. And don't be afraid to hold back some of that big vision. I think that's something, maybe it's just a little bit more of a conservative Midwest mindset or the Iowa nice. And I think that does ourselves a disservice when trying to build a company that hopefully makes the world a better place.
Very interesting. Yeah, the think big mentality can be intimidating or create almost an imposter syndrome by going that direction, but it creates space for big things to start small and grow and evolve and become something much bigger than perhaps you might have imagined. I appreciate that. Very good insight. And thank you for the generosity of your leadership. You've connected dots both locally, but all around the country. Your activity with the Young Entrepreneurs Convention over the years was always a treat. And whether it was being an entrepreneur or leading as an entrepreneur, your vision, your ability to think big, and your willingness to make a ruckus has been definitely appreciated by me, but many more folks than just myself.
Thank you, Ben. Happy and grateful to know you.
Yeah. Okay, let's close things down. Boy, I always hint at these 2-hour episodes where we can just jam and jam and jam and jam and jam. But as we close things down, concise is nice, and we appreciate your time. As I shared in the opening manifesto for season 2, I think there's a big difference between spending time, passing time, and wasting time. This feels like spending time, and I am thankful for the attention, but also the opportunity to create a relic with someone I really respect. Clayton, as we close things down, we'll have links in the show notes to everything that is you and your team and the impact you're making worldwide. But perhaps you could close us down with a mantra, a mic drop moment to guide our listeners toward next.
Yeah, if anyone out there wants to connect with me, my email is just the letter C at claytonfarms.com. Reach out if you think I can help in any capacity at any time. But I'd like to go back to what I touched on earlier of just life is so short, so it should be easier for us to think in decades. And at the end of the day, hard decisions equal easy life. Easy decisions equal hard life.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of You Don't Need This Podcast. We hope you enjoyed this weekly dose of innovative energy. Thanks to all who make this show possible. Be sure to smash that subscribe button, and I'd love to learn more about what you're building. Hit me up over at benmcdougal.com, and until next time, may the best of your todays be the worst of your tomorrows. Keep building.
How much editing do you do?
None.
None.
Correct.
Okay. I'll try not to drop any F-bombs or anything there.
Yeah, no swearing required. You're smart. You don't need to use that.
Okay.
And if my beepers were working, I don't know what's going on, but I can beep them out theoretically in real time. But yeah, we keep it clean just for ease of students being in the audience.
Deal. PG-13 Clayton. Yeah.
Boring. No. Any other thoughts?
Let's rock and roll.
All right.